Hey everybody, welcome to 30 Ways to Happy Days. I am Alana Yvonne with Truly Great Life, and we are on way number 20, 2/3 of the way there. So if you haven't watched or listened to way numbers 1 and 2, I do recommend you check them out as they are kind of foundational to the rest of the ways. And let's dig in. Way number 20 is the character strength of leadership. Now before I jump into definitions, what comes to mind when you think of leadership? What does leadership mean to you? Are you thinking in terms of the public realm, the political realm? Does your mind go to personal leadership? Just think about, did you have like a gut reaction to even the word? Did you have some kind of immediate thought that your brain just went to when you heard the word leader or leadership? So this is actually a way we can have a happier day. Okay, what the heck does that mean? So first of all, as I've explained, and as we now know, these character strengths are muscles, right? These are things that we have access to, everybody in the world. These character strengths are these qualities of humanity, of human beings, that help us flourish, thrive, experience more what we call well-being. Ultimately, just call it happier. So when we're aware that we have these muscles, even if we haven't used them, okay, we can start using them or learn about using them or try to use them. So leadership is an interesting one. So for some people, it's very obvious that this is a top character strength of theirs. They're natural leaders, right? And for some people, maybe this is a muscle that they don't even think they have because theirs is more about teamwork, which we've talked about. Maybe it's more, something that they've used about fairness or forgiveness, right? Not that these are, excluding one another, but some people very naturally have these leadership qualities. So what are these qualities? What the heck is leadership? Let's talk about leadership, okay? So there's leadership in the organizational sense, right? Leader, someone who is able and enjoys organizing, let's say, group activities to get things done, right? And on like a more general level, a leader is someone who positively influences others. If it's in an organizational sense, then maybe it's to achieve a certain goal, right? You can positively influence people, maybe like a spiritual leader or religious leader, to be a different way, right? Or to act a different way. So maybe that's not a specific goal within an organization with a very clear-cut end goal, right? And maybe it's more harder to pinpoint, but you have leadership in the church, you have leadership in your religious organization, you have leadership in government, you have leadership in organizations, you have leadership in the family, right? So in the definition sense, you're organizing activities, you are positively influencing others. There can be the practice of leadership, which the world of business obviously has a lot of attention on this quality, on this strength of how do we create leaders. Even schools also, a lot of talk about how are we creating leaders and how do we have, leadership both on the administrative side of a school, but also in the student body, and parent leadership and involvement. So leadership can really it can be a strength that can be brought up anywhere. Anytime you have people working together, we all know situations or have been in situations or scenarios where there was a lack of leadership. Now, without getting into specifics, think of a time, I'm not going to get into specifics, you can get specific, think of a time when there was a lack of leadership that impacted you, whether it was at work or in your community. If you want to go the political route, I'm sure you can think of examples historically, wherever you're at, okay? So leadership is something that I think everyone can agree hurts when it's lacking. And when it's there in the true sense of inspiring others, of organizing and demonstrating perhaps the vision and ready to take presenting a vision for people to rally around and get organized around, and where people feel motivated to take action, where they feel part of that vision that is being presented. Again, whether that's in a family or in an organization or in a nonprofit or in a community or in a friend group, right? Whatever it is. So the question is positive leadership. right? With all of these character strengths we're talking about, just imagine the word positive in front of all of them. So you can think of some examples perhaps of negative leadership, and then I would raise the question, is that authority really versus leadership? There's authority and then there's leadership. And authority, you're kind of talking about having the power or ability to maybe determine certain things, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's positive leadership, right? And there can be positive leadership through being a role model, or, influencing through example could be identified as a form of leadership, even if maybe the authority isn't there. So it's almost like a softer way to think about leadership, right? If you think of leader as the person with the power, that's one way. That's more a transactional way. A more transformational way of thinking about leadership is tying into the motivation of the group that you're working with or influencing or being a role model for, right? So where is the climate, how is the climate of the organization being, I don't want to use the word fostered, but like influenced by the leader? Is it one of trust, and is there commitment? So, in recent years, it's gotten very interesting, at least here in the US, where there's been a lot of discussion around leadership, okay? And there's been a lot of discussion about trust or lack of trust and authority and stuff like that. So think about what comes up for you when it comes to leadership. And now that's on like a macro level. Now bring it down a little bit. What is your situation at work? What is your situation with where you spend your time? What are those examples of leadership? What are your opinions of those? Are those more authoritarian? This is like parenting styles too, right? You have the authoritarian style, you have the permissive style, all these different styles. But what kind of leadership are you influenced by virtue of where you live, where you work? And then think about, let's take it down a little bit more. For yourself, right? There is the idea of personal leadership, right? In a sense, when you make a decision or a commitment to yourself to be a certain way, and these ways to happy days are again, like ingredients for you to kind of come up with your own individual recipe of how you want to be your best self. So personal leadership is related to perhaps accountability, taking responsibility for yourself and what you want, and making efforts to go out and get it in a way that is, ideally harmonious with your environment, in the sense of like not at the expense of somebody else, let's say, right? So how are you a leader? How do you want to be a leader, whether it's professionally or personally, within your family, within your relationships? How can you be inspirational, even lowercase I? We're not talking about everyone getting up there and being like, some prophet, right? or we're just talking about, and this is where, those random acts of kindness. We've talked about a lot of different things in these different ways, and they do enmesh. They can overlap. You can bring them in and pair them together. So for leadership, what kind of leader do you want to be? And it doesn't necessarily mean you have the authority, depending on your situation, to like make things happen 100%, but within your sphere of influence, what kind of leader do you want to be, right? And so this is something where, I believe everybody can exercise this muscle. So on an individual level, if you're like, dude, I work from home, I don't, manage anybody, I don't have, I've got my dog or I've got my cat, but I don't have anyone I'm responsible for. So then like, what is a habit that you're trying to, let's say, take on? What is a goal that you have just for yourself? And then every time that you use your own discipline or your own way of committing to following through or to learn more about it, you can say, I would say, that is using your personal leadership. That is using your muscle of leadership, because you are organizing yourself. Okay, it's a party of one, whatever. Like, you're organizing your day, you're organizing your time, you're being deliberate with your actions in order to achieve a certain goal. Okay? So while it can be, and usually is, about like a whole group, still with yourself, like exercise that muscle of leadership, motivate yourself to perform at that higher level, right? To go for it, to trust that you'll figure it out. So if you think I'm stretching this a bit, let me know. Love to hear from you. But it's just a different way to think of this idea of leadership beyond maybe, a very, stereotypical image of a leader from movies or from the media or from, just how you think of it as like the person in charge, that leadership. There's a lot more. It's a quality that is much more available, right, to everybody, even if the power isn't there or the authority isn't there. What do you have influence over that is exercising your muscle, your character strength of leadership? Okay? Can you influence, can you create an atmosphere of trust, even with your friend group, right? Are you able to kind of, what's the word? Like calm down an escalating situation? You could argue, yeah, that's social intelligence or whatever, emotional, like quotient's really high EQ, sure, but you can also look at it through the lens of leadership, right? Where you're able to come in to a situation with a group and get things done, which was like make peace or whatever it was. Take it down a notch so that everyone's like going towards, so that you don't get derailed from whatever it was you're trying to do in the first place. Just something to think about. All right. So leadership is an interesting one. It's an interesting one. And another way you could look at leadership is, if you're someone who likes to organize other people or work with others and help them get things done. If you like to be helping people, figure it out when you're in a brainstorming session and you have the ideas and you're able to get everyone to work together, if you have that quality, that of course is also part of leadership. If you like to make group activities happen, and to organize them. Some people are like, keep me away from it, but I'll show up. Okay, so that would be maybe not using your leadership strength as much. But again, are you setting a good example for others? For whatever it is, okay? Are you setting a good example, a positive example, an inspiring example to others about whatever it is that you're involved in? That could be also explained as using your leadership muscle, okay? So it's interesting because I've been in several school situations with my kids, different schools, and there's a lot of talk about, raising leaders and leadership, and it's one of many qualities I think that our kids need to have. Not everyone is going to be the one organizing all of the activities, right? Not everyone is going to be the CEO. But if we were to explain that it's also, just your own motivation, your own ability to do and maybe inspire or encourage others to do, yeah, we can all be leaders, So how are you communicating this idea of leadership, the idea that you have about leadership in your own family if you have kids, or in your own work environment, right? And what kind of leader, if you are responsible, right? If you are in that position of authority, what kind of leader are you? And how do you want to be? And how can you use maybe some of these other ways that I've been sharing to, expand your definition of leadership, or to be a more, what other ways can you pair with leadership, right? We haven't gotten to it yet, but sneak preview, like we're going to talk about kindness. How can you bring kindness into leadership? How can you bring humility into leadership? How can you bring forgiveness into leadership, right? So we compare these. And when you're looking to spot signs of leadership, what else are you seeing in there? Different kinds of leaders. If you have one idea of what a leader is, that's what you're gonna be looking for. But if you open that idea, open that definition of what leadership can be, you'll find that there is leadership in a lot of different ways. So, something to think about. And again, if you want things, if you're in a leadership position and you're looking for a little motivation, or if you don't feel like you're a leader but you'd like to have more, exercise this muscle, there are a bazillion and one quotes and resources out there on the internet. And if you find a quote that you like about leadership, write that puppy down and stick it on your mirror or put it in your wallet or whatever so that you can see it. And again, find one that resonates with you, right? This is a very simple hack to refocus, because we are wired to be distracted often. Okay, and so this would be an example of using personal leadership, of using your own muscle of leadership to be an example to yourself of, let's say, not being distracted in order to get whatever that job is done, right? You're organizing your time to get that job done. You're using that leadership muscle. In addition to self-control, which we've already talked about, but also you can pair it with leadership. All right. What I want to share also before I wrap this up, this one is a quickie, is a quote. I'm going to read this quote here. It's very interesting. This comes from a very special, brilliant man who is unfortunately no longer with us, but he was like the chief rabbi of the UK for many, many years. And he is Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. So here's just an interesting quote. Don't have to be Jewish to appreciate this quote. This is totally universal, I think. And again, if you disagree, let me know. So here it is. And this is from the introduction to his book, Daring Greatly, Introduction to Lessons in Leadership. Here we go. There is a distinction between leadership and authority. Authority is something you have in virtue of office or the position you hold in a family. So if you're a parent, you've got that authority. Community or society. Judaism has tended to be critical of power. Kings had it and often abused it. Prophets had none, but their influence has lasted to this day. Judaism is about leadership by influence, not about authority in virtue of formal office. End quote. So super interesting, right? Doesn't matter what your personal background is in or religion. Like, I think this idea of authority versus leadership is something anyone who is interested in having a happier day can think about. Like, first of all, are you in a situation where there is positive influence, or it's more about like the power and the authority? And what are ways, for you to consider what your options are there, or what it is you want to, do about it or think about it. But then for our own personal leadership, in our own roles at our work, right? In our own roles in community, in our own roles in families and relationships. Are you like the dictator in your parenting? Or are you very overly permissive, right? Where like there's no one to talk to and the kids are like wild hellions, able to do whatever they want. Parenting, I'm just, sticking on parenting here, but is a really interesting laboratory, shall we say, to learn about personal leadership. You know why? Because those kids are holding up a mirror to you, in a sense, right? If you have kids, they're holding up a mirror to how they are receiving your leadership by definition of you being in that parenting role, or lack thereof. So again, it is authority is something you have, but is the leadership there where you're inspiring someone? Leadership by influence, not authority by virtue of the role you're in. So what kind of leader do you want to be? What kind of leaders do you want to be around? A lot of time people leave their jobs because of conflict with their bosses, right? These are people in authority, but they aren't necessarily inspiring you as a leader. So just think about, leadership. So how can this make your day happier? Well, if we don't have, the ability, let's say, to walk away from a job or to change a situation at work or in a community or globally or in your country or whatever it is, right? Because on the more macro scale you go out, the more it can be like, oh my God, what influence can I have? But we do have the influence of our personal leadership. We do have the ability to tweak things a little, just a little. Again, the baby steps, baby steps. So what can you do in your own personal leadership to influence yourself to be, again, more of that person you would like to be, right? One of the biggest regrets people have at the end of their days is that they weren't the person they wanted to be as much. right? In addition to the bucket list. So what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of person do you want to be when you lay your head at night on your pillow and you go to bed? We're all imperfect, but can you see where using this character strength of leadership, just turn it, self-leadership. What can you do? And again, not to go like the full 180. That might bounce right back, snap at you. But baby steps to just kind of inch towards more of whatever that means for you with your own personal leadership in your relationships, in your habits, in the work you do, in your community, and then the ripple effect. Let's believe that ripple effect is going to happen the more we take our personal leadership muscle and exercise it. Okay? Let me know what you think. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.